How good was the Panthers rookie class in 2025? I'll tell you right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Over the next 2 days, we're going to take a look at the Panthers 2025 rookie class and 2025 free agency class, and I'm going to dole out some grades on how they performed the past year. Now, today, let's start off by talking about the rookies. Now, we're focused on the draft class, not the overall rookie class. Sorry to guys like Ryan Fitzgerald, who obviously was a high-impact player for the Panthers this past year with the walk-off kicks, the dirty kickoffs. He is deserving of all the praise, but we're not going to focus in on him. I'll give him a grade, an A, because obviously he was outstanding in everything the Panthers were hoping for out of a rookie kicker this past season. Early before the season, Dave Canales said, he's the kicker for now. And then the next day, Dan Morgan said, yeah, we're going to live with the ups and downs. And there were very, very few downs, a ton of ups in the Panthers, I think. I don't want to speak too soon and proclaim someone to be something that they're not, but it feels like they have their franchise kicker moving forward in Ryan Fitzgerald. Corey Thornton was another guy who earned his way onto the roster, was an interesting guy in training camp, found a way to be a starter late into the season before breaking his leg on Monday Night Football there in San Francisco. Don't want to give him a grade because it's kind of incomplete. And the way I'm going to break this down is by looking at high impact guys, rotational guys, and then there's a trio that I look at and just feel like it's not fair right now to give them a grade. So they're going to be incomplete grades. But let's start off by discussing the high impact rookies from the draft class last April. The guys who the Panthers very clearly went into that draft thinking that guy's going to help us out this upcoming season. And damn it, that's what Tetairoa McMillan and what Nick Scourton did this past year. Let's start off by talking about T-Mac, the 8th overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft. I did not anticipate he was going to be the pick. You look at the mock draft, the final one that ESPN did, I think it was Matt Miller of ESPN right before the draft that morning. He had Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle from Ole Miss, going to Carolina. There was talks about Mason Graham making sense to be a Panther. Of course, he spent a ton of energy and focus on this show talking about Jalen Walker. And you think about the year prior, Xavier Legette told the whole world, yeah, they said if I'm available, they're going to take me. And the Panthers did that. They traded up a day early to go out there and to go get their guy when Buffalo very clearly didn't want him. And whether you believe what the owner in Buffalo, Terry Bagula, said, or what Brandon Beane said in the video footage that's since been released, they always wanted Keon Coleman. I don't know, but T-Mac has been a godsend for this team. And really, they needed a true replacement of DJ Moore. They need to go find a number one receiver. And I looked at free agency. T. Higgins had been the apple of my eye to come to Carolina. That, of course, did not happen. The rest of the receiver market wasn't really that appetizing when you're looking for a number one type of guy. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, that never materialized for Carolina with the Dave Canales connection. They went out and got their guy, and he was fantastic. 70 receptions, a franchise rookie record of 1,014 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I spent a lot of time comparing T-Mac to the guys that were taken in the top 10 at receiver the year prior. That's being Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze. Those were the dudes that I thought T-Mac was in the same category as, and Xavier Legette wasn't in that category. So I didn't think it was ever fair to compare him to them. It certainly wasn't my opinion heading into this year to compare T-Mac to those guys because he had been an All-American at Arizona. He had gone 1, 2, 3 years and done in college because he was that kind of alpha male at the wide receiver spot down there in Tucson. And when you compare his rookie numbers, he had 70 receptions. Marvin Harrison had 62. Malik Neighbors was just bonkers, had 109. Rome had 54, so he outperformed them there. Looking at yardage, 1,014. Marvin Harrison had 885. Malik Neighbors, again, was outstanding 1,204. Rome Odunze, 734. Touchdowns, Tet had 7. Marvin Harrison had 8. Malik Neighbors had 7. Rome Odunze had 3. So all of the top 10 drafted wide receivers, at least guys going in the top 10 the last 2 years, it's got to be Malik Neighbors, Tetairoa McMillan, I guess Marvin Harrison Jr., then Rome Odunze. Like, he is above those other 2 guys, in my opinion. Now, Malik missed a lot of time this year because of a torn ACL, but you just look at the way that those guys performed in their rookie seasons. How can you argue against it being Neighbors than T-Mac among those 4 guys? And my expectations going into the year, when looking at the numbers that Harrison Jr., Neighbors, and Odunze put up as rookies in 2024, I thought that a 60 reception, 850 yards, 6 touchdown season would be a success, and it felt appropriate. In T-Mac blew past every single one of those numbers. Now, he did have only 1 more touchdown than I thought would be appropriate and expected, but he was great. And so far, the awards are coming in. He was named the Pro Football Writers Association Rookie and Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's been named a finalist for the AP Offensive Rookie of the Year, and he's a finalist for the Pepsi Rookie of the Year that will be awarded at NFL Honors during Super Bowl week. And if he is able to collect the AP and the official NFL one that's sponsored by Pepsi, that's going to be 4 awards for him. And that's not to mention, like, if Sports Illustrated or ESPN or other people decide to do their own, that guy, it's an A grade, but if he gets the next 2 awards, it's an A++. The Panthers needed to get an alpha out wide, and they got one in T-Mac. Excellent pick so far by Dan Morgan. Now, the other guy that they clearly prioritized there on night 2 when they needed to get an edge rusher was Nick Scourton out of Texas A&M. They traded up to go get him 51st overall there in the draft. And this past year, I thought Nick was really solid. Had 47 tackles, tied for the team lead with Derek Brown with 5 sacks, had a 68.1 PFF grade. If you look at just all the edge rushers in the NFL, that was 53rd out of 115 edge rushers. Now, again, with PFF, if you click on the player grades, they have guys that I guess supposedly qualify. His grade is different there than if you click on his page. So I don't know what is going on with that website. If anyone from PFF is listening, fix whatever you guys are doing, because it's just so inconsistent when I look at one thing and it's this number and look at something else and it's that number in the rant. As far as his pressure percentage this past season, 10.1% and had 34 pressures. So, okay, not great, but certainly when looking at the rest of the Panther players, was one of the best among the guys that were true edge rushers this past season. And he played 68% of the defensive snaps. And once Pat Jones went down, they needed a lot out of Nick Scourton, and they got a lot from Nick Scourton this past year. And it's not just the on-field production, because I think he's really great when it comes to run defense. And he actually had a pretty good coverage grade, like an 86.5 coverage grade, which was pretty impressive to see, knowing, and we talked about this with Mike K last week, Ejiro Evero, the Panthers DC, the embattled DC you all want gone, he asked of guys like Nick Scourton to be in coverage, and the fact that Nick is as solid in coverage as he is, that's just another reason why this organization wanted him, why he's a scheme fit, and why he's going to be one of the future leaders of this team. And I think back to the game against Buffalo when they got their doors blown off. Nick was there in the locker room talking to the media about what's going on with that team and how they need to be better and all that. And I just, maybe the Saints game, I don't remember which one it was, but there was one game where I'm not trying to pass judgment on any of the guys who did not stick around to talk to media after the game on Sunday. They're always, again, available on Monday, so they will be available at some point in time. But just a lot of respect out of the rookie to stick around to talk to us and to show that he was one of the team leaders. Because typically, like, Bryce has to, because he's the quarterback, contractually has to talk to us. But it's guys like JC, it's Derek Brown, who are always there to give us their thoughts after the game as the team leaders. And Nick Scourton has already become one of those young leaders for the Panthers. So I'm going to give him a B, maybe a B+, a B grade right now. I think he's really good as far as stopping the run, good in coverage. But what they need from him eventually is to be a plus pass rusher. I don't know if he's ever going to be a consistent double-digit sack guy, but can he get pressure? That's what you want to see moving forward. But I think as a rookie, really solid year, above average year. I'm giving him a B grade. So as far as the high impact guys, T-Mac and Nick Scourton, an A, potential A plus for T-Mac, then a B. And if you want to be generous, B plus for Nick Scourton. How about the rotational impact guys? That's Princely Umanmielen, Lathan Ransom, Mitch Evans. What grades did they deserve after their rookie seasons? I'll tell you right here on Locked On Panthers. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to stay locked into every moment than with Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where it always feels good to be right. With football season coming down to its final stretch, now is the perfect time to close it out strong. Prize Picks makes watching the game even more exciting by letting you build simple lineups around player projections. No drafts, no waiting, just football action all the way through the playoffs. Prize Picks is incredibly easy to get started. Pick two or more players and choose more or less on their projections. Great way to keep playing fantasy football even after season-long leagues have finished. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not just you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by the people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download Robinhood app now to begin. Without a doubt, T-Mac and Nick Scourton were the best two picks that Dan Morgan and the Panthers organization made last draft in 2025. Let's take a look at some of the other guys who I wouldn't say were the next best, but at least guys we can grade after their rookie seasons as far as their impact as being rotational guys as rookies this past year in Carolina. Let's go to the guy who's picked in the third round. The Panthers doubled up at edge rusher on that Friday evening, going up to 77th overall to take Princely Umanmielen. There we go. The edge rusher out of Ole Miss, who had an interesting season. Now, it feels a lot more interesting based off of the comments that he had after locker room, or not after, during locker room cleanout day a couple of Sundays ago, where a lot of talk about the scheme, about the lack of a pass rush and all of that. And I don't know. It's something I don't really want to touch too much on, but it did raise an eyebrow for me and also plenty of y'all out there who've been highly critical, rightfully so, I think, about the defense coordinator, Ejiro Evero. And again, we talked about him with Mike K on the shows last week, so go back and listen to that as we were previewing this offseason for Carolina and some of the moves that may be made and some of the moves that have been made and whether they're right or wrong decision, all that. So that was very interesting, just Princely's overall disposition. I would just say that. Like, I wasn't right there talking to him. That was Vash. I heard who's talking. I was not in that scrum. I think I might have been talking like Mike White, which you're probably like, why are you talking to Mike White? I was just curious. But looking at Princely's season, had 1.5 sacks, certainly a lot lower total than a lot of people would have had hope for during his rookie year. You also just look at his PFF pressure percentage. It was 6.9%. Compare that to, again, Nick Scourton, 10.1. So it doesn't seem like significantly that more, but it is pretty less there. And it was in 131 pass rushing snaps. And looking just at the true pass rushers this past season in Carolina, not naming DJ Johnson, who was cut after week 4, Princely had the lowest pass rushing rate among edge rushers in Carolina this past season, which I don't think a lot of people would have expected for him as a rookie. He only played 22% of the defensive snaps this past year, and you did see his snap count go down as the season progressed late into the year. He only played more than, looking at the last 5 games of the regular season, he played single-digit snaps. Only going to I think it was a game against the Saints on the road is when he played double-digit snaps, and then in the wild card round against the Rams, he played 13 snaps. So really looking at for the last 6 games, single-digit snaps. They weren't asking him to do a ton defensively. Played a lot on special teams, but defensively, they didn't really have him as a big piece of the game plan. And we know going into the season that he was seen primarily as an pass rusher and that he was going to have to work really on his run defense moving forward. And we'll just see how that goes. So I just look at him this past year. He's a young dude, not trying to be highly critical of him at all. I think it was maybe slightly below average. So I'm going to give him a C- just based off of the impact that he had as a rotational guy this past season, where the expectation, because again, they took him on day 2 of the draft back in April, it's going to be for him to be an even more high impact player this upcoming season for Carolina. So we'll see how he continues to progress here as an edge rusher for the Panthers. A guy who's taken in the 4th round, 122nd overall, fresh off a national championship, was Lathan Ransom at a position of need at safety. And looking at his year this past season, PROPEL reference gives him 6 starts on the year. You look at the game against the Rams, that was a game where he played the most snaps this past season. He played 34% of the defensive snaps very clearly, as we saw play out. It was Trevor Merrick and it was Nick Scott, who are the top 2 safeties for Carolina this past year as far as just what the role was in snaps played. And of course, starts as they played and started in every single game they were available in this past year. Nick playing and starting in every game, and then Trevor only missing that game against the Rams where he was suspended because of the situation there with Juwan Jennings, who people don't seem to like very much in the NFL, that played defensively against him. Looking at Lathan, his PFF grade, 60.6, and that was 67th out of 98 safeties this past year. I found this to be very interesting. His run defense grade had an 85.1. That was 4th best among all the safeties in the NFL this past season during the regular season. His coverage grade, though, that does need some help. There were a couple of games. I think back to the game against, I believe, the Cowboys, where he was one of the lowest graded guys defensively. And I think in large part because of his coverage grade, a 53.3 coverage grade. He allowed 11 receptions on 17 targets for 187 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, which was huge in that game against Tampa. Had a 96.9 passer rating allowed when he was targeted this past season. I think all around, he got some good snaps. Had a critical moment in the season. You could look at 2 of them. The one in New Orleans, that's just a tough call. And I don't really know what he's going to do in that situation. So I don't really look at him as being, oh, wow, what a boneheaded play. No, just the way the game is officiated. I don't know what you can ask out of Lathan Ransom or any defender in that situation. But to bounce back to next week and make that big play, I thought all around, solid rookie year. Not good, not bad, just right there, pretty in the middle. So what does that result? A C. And I think he's going to continue to play a piece of this defense. And we'll see, just based off what they want to do in free agency, if you will get a chance to be a starter this upcoming fall. The last guy I want to look at here is Mitchell Evans out of Notre Dame, was taken in the 5th round, 163rd overall. And when you looked at Mitch coming out of Notre Dame, we talked to the Locked On Notre Dame host, whose name is escaping me right now, but he just talked about how early on in Mitch's career in South Bend, he was a blocking tight end. Then the past 2 years, his last 2 years at Notre Dame, he ended up being one of the top pass catchers for the Fighting Irish. And he also mentioned how back in 24, the year where Notre Dame went on that run to the national title game before losing to Lathan Ransom and the Buckeyes, Mitch was coming back from a torn ACL. So they didn't really get to see the best out of Mitch. And he thought that this season you would see the true Mitch Evans. So that excites me for what he could be moving forward, as this past year, arguably, he was the best tight end for the Panthers. JT Sanders had a disappointing season. Tommy Tremble, numbers-wise, career year, but that's just kind of who Tommy's going to be. He's never going to be an A-plus kind of tight end. He's going to just be a solid dude, good locker room presence, and can go out there and help you in certain situations. Like, you'll take a Tommy Tremble on your team every single day, absolutely. But maybe Mitch can be more than that. Had 19 receptions, 171 yards, 2 touchdowns. Looking just at PFF, he was the highest graded of the tight ends. Now, technically James Mitchell was, but he played like 60 snaps this past year. Looking at the 3 primary tight ends, that being Mitch Evans, JT Sanders, and of course, Tommy Tremble, 66.3 PFF grade. So he was the best among those 3 guys this past year. I think overall, he was solid. I'm going to give him B-. I'm going to give him his above average, I think, and thinking just where you get him at the end of the 5th round, I'm going to give him a B- grade, and I'm very interested to see just where his career goes from here in this offense and, of course, just in this franchise moving forward. So those are the guys I looked at as rotational impact players as rookies. There's a couple who got drafted we have not talked about, and I give them incomplete grades because I just don't think it's fair at this point in time to grade them based off the rookie year and not giving or getting that many opportunities. That's Trevor Etienne, Cam Jackson, and Jimmy Horn Jr. We'll talk about those three here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Sponsored jobs boost your posts to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a higher than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Three more guys I want to take a look at when looking back at the Carolina Panthers rookie class. Again, only focusing today on the guys that were drafted by the Carolina Panthers, that being Tetairoa McMillan, Nick Scourton, Princely Umanmielen, Trevor Etienne, Lathan Ransom, Cam Jackson, Mitch Evans, and then Jimmy Horn Jr. Now, we talked about 5 of them. Now let's talk about the final 3 that were selected in the 2025 draft by the Panthers, who I just don't think right now it's fair to give them any grades because I just don't think the roles that they played this past season allowed us to glean too much out of what kind of player they are or going to be in Carolina long term. Looking at Trevor Etienne, drafted in the 4th round, 114th overall out of Georgia, and the thought was he's going to come in, could potentially be a 3rd down back for Carolina. You got Rico Dowdle, you got Chuba Hubbard, maybe Trevor could be a 3rd down type of guy. And he also had an opportunity to be a returner. And you look offensively, he didn't get a lot of opportunities. 63 total snaps in the regular season, 20 carries, 94 yards. So you can't really grade him off of any of that at all. He was, though, the primary returner for the Panthers on punts and kickoffs this past season. And looking at his punt returns, he had 2 muffs, one against Atlanta, and the one that we saw against the Rams a couple of Saturdays ago, and neither one of those resulted into points. John Parker Roma missing a field goal, the Rams having a turnover on downs, so he did not hurt his team there other than them not getting the ball that point in time and just how things play with the clock. So that's the only kind of mistakes that he made. But other than that, I thought he was fine as a returner. He had never returned punts, at least in college. That was not what he was asked to do. He had 20 punt returns for 163 yards, 8.2 yards per punt return, which was below the league average of 10.2. And just the way I look at punts now, just get back there, catch the ball. And if you're going to be returning a punt, don't return it at the 5-yard line. I don't know why this has become a thing with punt returners across all levels of football. Whatever happened to standing at the 10-yard line and then let the ball go over your head? Like, why at the 5? And maybe it's going to be a great punt and it's going to be right there down at the 1-yard line and it sucks. But I would rather my punt returner just let that thing go and let's see what the football gods want to let happen in that situation than them receiving it at the 5. Just makes no sense to me. But he was below the league average as far as yards per return. To me, whatever. Just don't drop the ball, which he did twice. Kick returns, he had 31 of them for 733 yards, 23.6 yards for kick return rather, and that was also below the league average, 25.9. I did think there were points times where he actually was a real positive for Carolina as a returner. I think it was the Saints game. The second one, I want to say that's one where he really helped them out. But yeah, below average. So we'll see how they address that. Raheem Blackshear was also below average back in 24 when he was a primary returner, but then they drafted Trevor. Maybe they'll draft another running back. We'll see what happens there. But I do think he'll get an opportunity to be an actual running back this upcoming season. And that also depends upon, do they bring back Rico Dowdle? I think that's not going to happen. It's going to be Chuba. It's going to be Trevor. And then whatever Jonathan Brooks is. And they'll obviously bring in somebody else, whether it just be for the preseason or someone they actually feel like can be a fourth running back on the roster this upcoming season. So incomplete grade for me when it comes to Trevor Etienne. I do think he's maybe got some juice there as a running back, but we'll have to find out later on this fall. Cam Jackson was a teammate of Trevor Etienne at Florida before Trevor, I guess, committed a cardinal sin by going to Georgia to be the running back, transferring from UF. Cam Jackson, drafted in the 5th round, 148th overall, only played 9 games and had 9 tackles, so average a tackle per game. Not high impact, but he only played 85 total defensive snaps this past year. And this is one of the things that when you look at PFF, they gave him a 45.5 PFF grade. Now, they said that he did not play enough snaps to qualify for where he ranked among guys in the NFL this past season, which I suppose is a good thing. But as far as the snaps that he did play behind Derek Brown, behind Turk Orton, behind Bobby Brown III, and behind Ashawn Robinson, it didn't seem to be like he was giving you that much quality. Again, 85 total defensive snaps. I'm not going to make too much of it. So let's wait and see what his impact could be this fall, where, again, it's probably going to be Ashawn, obviously Derek Brown, Bobby Brown, and then Turk, who are going to be the top 4 guys there at the interior defensive tackle spot. So we may be waiting until 2027 to find out what Carolina really has in Cam Jackson. And as I like to do, I like to go after their 3rd seasons and really give a true look at how those draft picks have played out, which we'll do later on this offseason with the Bryce Young draft class. Finally, Jimmy Horn Jr. He was selected out of Colorado, having played with Coach Prime, 6th round, 208th overall. And he was somebody people were excited about. Felt like he could be a returner, could be a gadget type of guy, bring some speed, which Panthers desperately needed. And I still feel like desperately need at this point in time offensively. And overall, took him a minute before he got an opportunity in the first half of the season. He gets a chance against Miami, makes that play on that 4th down. And really cool to see a guy who clearly they want to see him work on some things. He got his opportunity and made the most of it, but still, they didn't really have many plans for him in this offense this past season. Had 11 receptions, 108 yards, had 8 rushes, 69 yards, played 148 offensive snaps, and a surprisingly low 5 special team snaps. I thought he would be a guy they'd want to return, but that was never really the case for them this past season. I think it happened maybe once or twice, but it was not to the level that Trevor Etienne had, where I thought it maybe like Trevor or Jimmy would be the guys they'd call on, and that really wasn't what they wanted to do. Maybe that changes next season. I don't know. But yeah, Jimmy Horn, we'll see what he ends up being. There's a drop there against the Rams. The fans are not happy about. I think either way, they're not going to win that game. They're kind of screwed. Maybe they've been in position to maybe run one more play to get closer, then go for a Hail Mary. But I think it's too early to really grade Jimmy because it's not like they asked him to do a lot. Same case with Cam Jackson. Trevor, they only asked him to be a returner, when I think he's going to be a little bit more for them once he gets an opportunity to be a running back. So those are the guys I have graded as incomplete at this point in time. But I do have grades tomorrow for the free agency class Panthers sign. I'm looking at the guys who were the primary free agents they signed back in March last year. We'll grade them tomorrow on Locked On Panthers. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all, subscribe or follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and over on Blue Sky at Julian Council, where I will be back on Friday answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me over on Twitter, over on Blue Sky at Julian Council. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Tuesday.